Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Northumberland series. Northumberland is the northeastern tip of all of England. It's a unitary county containing 166 civil parishes. Let's see which one we're in today. Welcome back to Northumberland, everybody. Now this one is very, very unique. For the first time ever, I had to check the tide times before I could do this particular episode, because this is an island, which actually isn't an island if you believe the website of its castle. And it's linked to the mainland by a causeway, and at high tide it's inaccessible, so you have to wait until the tide has receded before you can cross from Northumberland onto Holy Island. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Merry Christmas, everyone. In this, the last Village Idiot episode before Santa comes, we're on Holy Island, which is also known as Lindisfarne. This is a tidal island and a major local tourist attraction off the northeast coast of Northumberland. The island has a recorded history which goes back all the way to the 6th century AD. The nearest point to the mainland is about 0.8 miles away, and it's accessible at low tide by a modern causeway and an ancient pilgrims path. The island has a small population of 180 people. As well as being a place of great natural beauty, Lindisfarne is the place where Christianity first arrived in England in 635 AD. It's been a place of pilgrimage ever since. The name Holy Island was in use by the 11th century when it appears in Latin as Insula Sacra. The reference was to St. Aidan and St. Cuthbert. Holy Island and Lindisfarne are used almost interchangeably when talking about the island. Holy Island is the official name of the civil parish, and native inhabitants are known as islanders. However, residents of the island are more likely to refer to their home as Lindisfarne. The combined term, the Holy Island of Lindisfarne, has begun to be used more frequently in recent times. There's lots here, so for the last time in 2022, let's go for a walk. There are two main ways to reach Lindisfarne. There are others, but we're not about to list those here because they're irrelevant. As a visitor to Lindisfarne, you're either going to be walking or driving. If you're driving, you're going to be crossing the Lindisfarne Causeway, and that is what we're on right now. It can only be crossed safely at low tide. The causeway is generally open from about 3 hours after high tide until 2 hours before the next high tide. However, the period of closure may be extended during stormy weather. On the day we visited, the causeway was open at 9:20 AM and remained so until 2:35 PM, giving us more than enough time to explore the island. At each end of the causeway, there are tables which are produced by Northumberland County Council, which state the safe crossing periods in relation to the tides. Despite these warnings, on average, one vehicle each month gets stranded on the causeway. Any vehicle that gets stranded on the causeway must be rescued either by the local Coast Guard or by the lifeboat that's based at sea houses. In 2009, the average cost of one of these rescues amounted to £1,900. That's the equivalent of £2,710 today. You might have noticed as well that the causeway is quite narrow and it has no barrier between it and what is effectively the exposed seabed. Local people have opposed one, primarily on convenience grounds. There is a second way to reach Lindisfarne. You can walk it, and you actually have two different ways to do so. One option is to walk on the causeway, and many folk do. We saw plenty of people walking it whilst we were driving. The other way is to use a waymarked path across the sands and mud just south of the causeway. That path is known as the Pilgrims Path, and it's the traditional way to reach the island. Walking across takes about 2 hours. Once you're safely on the island, you're encouraged to use the main car park. This is Chair End's car park, and it's located just to the north of the main village. You can only use the street parking here if you're a Holy Island resident. I agree with that because this is a tourist hotspot. As a tourist, Chair End's is a good place to start because it's where you'll find this huge information panel which shows you practically everywhere on the island. Chair End's also displays the tide information and safe crossing times we talked about on the causeway. You'll also find one of these on the A1 at Beale service station because Holy Island is only 5 miles away from it. Holy Island produces a lot of its own goods which are sold in its shops and on roadside stalls like this one. Some are exported to other areas of Northumberland, but a lot stay on the island. This encourages visitors and keeps the island's economy going. So there is a village here and people do live in it. It's very small, but most of the island's main features are sort of out of the village, like for example Lindisfarne Castle and the thing at Emmanuel Head that I can't remember the name of, but we'll get there eventually. Now I want to show you something just before we enter the main village. We'll just hop across the road. You'll be able to see in the distance a water tower over here. Now my route does not pass this because it's kind of out of the way, but I thought the best way to show you this is from this road going into the village. There is the water tower. To all intents and purposes, most of Holy Island Village is like any other village. Let's have a look at some of the other village landmarks. To kick us off, we have a fire station. The small station houses one retained pump. If you fancy more than just a day trip here, you are able to stay on the island. This right here is the Lindisfarne Hotel, a comfortable and homely family guest house personally run by its owners. It has 7 rooms and is wheelchair friendly. The white building in shot there is a post office, which is pretty unique. Connected to this, there's a cafe, and you can buy some small gifts and souvenirs here too. It's also new. Google Street View, which is dated 2008, still shows this to be a house. Over the road is our first religious site. This is St Aidan's, the island's Catholic church, which was built in 1957. It's open to visitors, but masses are held depending on tide times and visiting priests. So Nikki's taking it all in. Here at the end of Green Lane, you can find the wild Nikki with a camera in her hand taking a picture of Lindisfarne Castle. We will be close up to that later. It's an impressive building, this. Next, we're on to St Cuthbert Square, and although this corner looks like nothing of note, it is in fact known as the Palace. Occupying this entire corner, the Palace is a scheduled monument. This was a medieval house and Tudor supply base. On Marygate, we find a pub, which has been here for several hundred years. Formerly called the Northumberland Arms, in 1995 the building was renamed to the Ship Inn, although islanders still affectionately refer to the pub as the Tavern. Heading the other way on Marygate, we've got the National Trust's Lindisfarne shop. This sells a selection of goods ranging from local guidebooks to outdoor wear and hiking equipment. The back garden also stocks a large selection of plants and garden gear. And after that we headed down Crossgate, where there's Crossman Hall, the village's local community centre. Outside there's a red phone box with a working phone no less, and also the all-important parish notice board. So even though these streets here on Holy Island look like you can just park your car anywhere, you have to have permission to do so. That's why there's a car park, that's why we started there. And here I can show you what the Holy Island residents have to display in their windscreens. Holy Island residents. Our next port of call was the Lindisfarne Centre. In here there's an exhibition about the illuminated manuscript known as the Lindisfarne Gospels, an early 8th century illustrated copy of the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. That was good timing because directly opposite you'll find the Lindisfarne Gospel Garden. This was inspired by the vivid colours of the manuscript. Newcastle City Council entered the garden in the 2003 Chelsea Flower Show and it won a silver medal. The Gospel's artist was possibly Eadfrith, who later became Bishop of Lindisfarne. It's speculated that monks from Lindisfarne Priory worked on the text, acting as a team of illuminators and calligraphers, but if so, their identities are unknown. Now we've turned a corner and we're on Lewins Lane, and that's Holy Island School. Holy Island works together with Lowick C of E First School. The children who live on the island travel to Lowick when the tide allows. I think I overuse the word character to describe places at times, and chocolate box, but that's your thing. But certainly character is what you find when you come to Holy Island, because there's no two houses the same, and it's just lovely really to see an area, you know, a place that's got
lots of unique attributes.
Yeah, very unique Holy Island. It's well worth a visit if you've never been here before. We're only halfway around. Moving on, here's the St Cuthbert Centre, and this is a United Reformed church. This has a prayer tree upon which visitors can place their prayer requests. Each one is then mentioned at the church's prayer times. Around another corner, and now we're on Prior Lane. That building is St Aidan's winery, which makes the world famous Lindisfarne mead. The showroom has been open to the public since 1968 and attracts visitors annually from all over the world. We'll show you in a while what we bought from there. The walk continues and we're in the marketplace now. I've termed this area the Cross, but that's not its official name. The Manor House Hotel can be seen to the left. And from there we enter the grounds of Lindisfarne Priory, which is right next to Holy Island's Church of St Mary the Virgin. These are two of the three most religious sites Lindisfarne has. The other is St Cuthbert's Island. So admission charges apply to the Priory, but you can walk around the churchyard for free, which is a good thing because there's some blooming interesting stuff in here. For a start, we've got a statue of St Aidan. Lindisfarne Priory was founded by St Aidan, an Irish monk who'd been sent from Iona off the west coast of Scotland to Northumbria at the request of King Oswald. Aidan remained here until his death in 651. The priory remained the only seat of a bishopric in Northumbria for nearly 30 years, and Lindisfarne became the base for Christian evangelism in the north of England. Northumbria's patron saint, St Cuthbert, was a monk here and also later the abbot. The Lindisfarne Priory you see today is not the original. When the abbey was rebuilt by the Normans, its site was moved. It was originally here where the church now stands. This is a Grade 1 listed building and is listed as part of the whole priory. After the Reformation, the church slipped into disrepair until it was restored in 1860. It's built of coloured sandstone, which has the Victorian plaster removed from it. The north aisle, which houses the altar of St Peter, is known as the Fisherman's Aisle. Now, normally when we come in churches, I'm able to speak in my normal voice, but of course this is a touristy place and there are people in here who have come to pray as well as visit, so I'm being as hushed as I can. There's stuff everywhere. Look at this, for example. You just don't know where to look in here. Let's have a wander around, eh, Nicky? Certainly one of the most impressive churches we've ever been in before, for a number of reasons. There's a tray of candles there. Are you going to light one, sweetheart? Yeah. Okay, alright. There are plenty of displays around the walls. Over there in the corner, that one explains all about St Oswald and St Aidan.
There's lots of seafaring references in here as well, and of course the church is getting ready for its harvest festival if it's not already taken place.
Yeah. Yeah, some coats of arms on the wall. This is a very impressive church. Well recommended. We're now on the southern shore of the island. At low tide, you can walk across here to St Cuthbert's Island. On it is a small cell, marked by a cross which St Cuthbert himself is said to have occupied. This building on the shore is the island's lifeboat museum. The island's most famous lifeboat was called the Lizzie Porter, which was based at Holy Island from 1909 to 1925, and then at Northumberland from 1925 to 1936. The boat is now on display at the historic dockyard in Chatham. The last lifeboat house on the island was located under this steep hill, called the Heoff. It was in an elevated position so that boats could slide into the sea at any stage of the tide. We climbed up to the top of the Heoff, and to be fair, you don't have a choice because there's no path to go around it. Mind you, up here you get some breathtaking views, and the Heoff has some landmarks of its own too.
You know, we're on the top of a hill here, and Andy said to me, as we're coming up this hill, which was steep and full of rocks, I don't know what you're grumbling for, you climbed up Northumberland, which is in North Wales. Yes dear, about 8 years and 6 stone ago. Just saying.
Anyway, this is where we are. This is the hill we're on top of, and we are in this little enclosure next to this. Number 3, which is a Coast Guard station.
It's a Heoff.
Yes, it's a Heoff, this hill. There's a cenotaph at the back of this, which is our next sort of thing to look at. And then we're going to go down the other side of the hill towards the harbour, which is this area here, around the harbour to Lindisfarne Castle. The building we've just been standing in is called the Lantern Chapel, confusing because it's never been a chapel. Its origin is unknown, but the name may indicate an early navigation light on the Heoff. From up here, you have this view of the Priory. The Priory was abandoned, by the way, between 1536 and 1537 as part of the dissolution of the monasteries. Here's the cenotaph, which is in a bit of a ruined state currently. The base is intact, but the rest of it lies in pieces beside the path. Following the path will take you into Lindisfarne Harbour. The harbour is a working environment, and although people are not encouraged to walk here, you have every right because these are public paths. Check out these lobster pots, by the way. The harbour is run by the island's Community Development Trust. The muddy area in shot now is called the Ooze and is used as a mooring for local fishing boats. Speaking of boats, on the shore are some famous ones, but you can't sail in them anymore. So to our left here, your right, these are upturned boats which have been turned into little houses.
Sheds.
Well, shed, yeah, storage, yeah, I suppose. Although I suppose you could live in them if they were properly sort of fitted out, as it were, but I don't think I've ever seen that before. Definitely another unique Holy Island feature. One of Lindisfarne's biggest attractions is Lindisfarne Castle. This was built in the 16th century, around the time that Lindisfarne Priory went out of use, and stones from the priory were used as building material. It looks big, but it's small in comparison to some. The castle sits on the highest point of the island, a windstone hill called Beblow Crag. It began life as a defence for Lindisfarne Harbour after Henry VIII decreed it should be fortified against possible invasion from the Scots. After the unification of England and Scotland, the castle was no longer needed for its original purpose, but its gun batteries remained throughout the English Civil War, during which it supported the Roundheads. In 1901, it became the property of Edward Hudson, the owner of Country Life magazine. It's said that Hudson came across the building whilst touring Northumberland. He had it refurbished in the arts and crafts style by Sir Edward Lutyens. To say that Lindisfarne Castle occupies a commanding position would be a big understatement. Easily the most instantly recognisable feature on Holy Island. Okay, we've split up now. Nikki has gone back into the village. I'm on my own for the rest of this video, and next we are heading towards a garden, which is what that wall is in front of us. This walled garden, which had originally been the castle's vegetable plot, was designed by Lutyens' longtime friend and collaborator Gertrude Jekyll between 1906 and 1912. It's some distance away from the castle itself. Between 2002 and 2006, it was restored to Jekyll's original planting plan, which is now held in the Reef Collection at the University of California. The castle, garden and nearby lime kilns have been in the care of the National Trust since 1944 and are open to visitors. We're now on the England coast path as we move away from the thriving village centre to head up the island's eastern shoreline. Check out this bird sculpture. This forms part of the Lindisfarne Willow Bird Sculpture Trail. I found an owl a little later on too. This path will take us up towards another major island landmark. On the way, we're treated to the island's rough, rocky coastline, which has been the scene of many a shipwreck in its time. So what we're doing here is we're heading away from Lindisfarne Castle, which is in the background, and heading towards Emmanuel Head, which is a little white pyramid which you might be able to see in the very far distance. This is the eastern side of Holy Island with some fantastic views across the North Sea. This is where I'm certainly going to go for it with the scenic picture shots. The rest of the island is termed Lindisfarne Nature Reserve. It was designated as such in 1964. The reserve covers a massive 8,500 acres and includes Holy Island Loch, which was believed to be a fish pond for the priory. According to this sign, parts of the reserve suffer from issues with piri-piri burr, a small shrubby plant that forms dense mats, which often results in the loss of native plants. It was first recorded in the UK in 1901, but it's native to New Zealand and Australia. This then is Emmanuel Head with its bright white pyramid. This was built in 1810. It's a day marker, one of the first in the UK. It acted as a warning to ships, kind of like what a lighthouse does, just without the light. It serves as a constant reminder of how dangerous this stretch of the North Sea's coast can be. The pyramid is often given a lick of paint to keep it looking bright. Birdwatchers often use Emmanuel Head, by the way, for sea watching. I've got to tell you, it's a long old walk to get to this point. Lindisfarne Castle and the water tower and some other landmarks we've seen already are just mere specks on the horizon up here. And now I've got to walk all the way back into the village to find Nikki. Worth the walk though, absolutely worth the walk, and worth it for these fantastic views across the North Sea, and for this pyramid too. All that was left to do at this point was to walk back to the village on one of the many paths across the nature reserve. There's more to Holy Island than what I've shown you, but we simply didn't have time to cover it all. This path emerges in the island's coach park. Many coach holiday companies frequent the island. This park also has facilities for the disabled. Make no mistake about it, Holy Island is an inclusive place and welcomes everybody. I found this interesting too. It's a bus timetable, which is something I didn't expect to see. According to this, the island is served by two buses. These are the 477, which connects it to Berwick, and the H1, which runs to Belford. After a quick trip back through the village, I was reunited with Nikki, who I found back at Chair End's car park, sat patiently waiting for me to return. In my absence, Nikki had been spending money on some more of the local goodies. So then, dear, what did you get from the store while I was trekking my way through that lot?
Well, I've got a bag full of stuff here today because we got some stuff from earlier on at the mead shop. We got some rhubarb and ginger preserve, and
it's got mead in it, hasn't it?
Yeah, raspberry jam with mead in it, and 3 little bottles, sort of different types of Lindisfarne mead.
14.5% volume, by the way.
Yeah. I got a guidebook, a visitor guide for Holy Island, which I thought would be quite interesting to have a look at.
Indeed.
And then from this little stall, which is literally just outside the car park here, I got 3 jars of preserves that were made on the island. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Lovely.
So there we go.
Originally, the plan was to record the outro to this video on the Lindisfarne causeway because it has little recesses where you can pull over and admire the view. We did do that, but the wind noise was horrendous, so to plan B. With the camera pointing out to the south, this is part of our drive back to the mainland. Look for the tall sticks in the water which mark the pilgrims' path. I'm going to use this opportunity to squeeze in a mention of the Holy Island Wagonway. In the 1860s, a Dundee-based firm built lime kilns on Lindisfarne where lime was burnt until at least the end of the 19th century. The kilns were among the most complex in Northumberland, and you can find them close to Lindisfarne Castle. Here's a picture of them I found on the internet. Horses carried the limestone along the wagonway from quarries at the northern end of the island to the kilns. The wagonway also connected to a tidal jetty called the Basin, located to the northwest of Lindisfarne Priory. And that's a wrap for 2022. Be sure to come back in January after the Christmas break to see where else my travels around the country will take me next year. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot. This has been the Parish of Holy Island, and I'm out.